Accent bias. Yeah, interesting. Sorry, could you say that again? Can I just ask, where are you from? Those moments when you realise that people are making judgments about you or summing you up based on how you sound rather than what you say. I'm having a look today at this fantastic research project called Accent Bias Britain. It's led by Queen Mary University of London, and it looks at how much accent bias there is in British society today. And there's a training for employers section that I caught my eye and I wanted to have a look at today. And it includes a quiz on accent bias, whether you can filter out accent bias and judge people just on what they're saying, not on how they sound when they say it. I'm going to see if I pass the test. So here's the interactive quiz, and you'll hear a range of candidates give answers to 10 questions. Your task will be to focus on how good their response is and to try not to pay attention to their accent. So you have to read the question, and then there's an audio clip. Listen to that, and then you rate their answer as good, thumbs up, or bad, thumbs down. And then you get a report at the end. Here we go.
Technology is going to be increasingly important. People have been talking about great new technologies such as blockchain. I read that British law firms were still using faxes a lot until 10 years ago, which shows how outdated our technologies can be. In my view, new technology is inevitable and law firms need to keep up with the latest innovations and work with them. It doesn't help to bury our heads in the sand and hope we won't have to change how we work.
Okay, so here we've got an example of what they call on this site General Northern English.
I read that British law firms were still using faxes a lot until 10 years ago.
A sort of Northern English version of RP, like a standardised sound that's not tied to any particular town or city in the north of England. I think that was a bit of a flimsy answer. I'm going to rate that as thumbs down. Moving on.
For both sides, lawyers are needed to advise on laws and terms, prepare the documentation, and make sure the deal goes smoothly with the best results with their client.
Okay, so here we've got an RP, received pronunciation accent. Now, this is the accent that I work with as a baseline sound for the coaching that I do with people. Regardless of the accent, I think this is a convincing answer. The substance of what this person is saying is good. So I'm going to rate that thumbs up. Moving on.
I found Bridgeport FC's £50 million acquisition of Glenn Evans very interesting. Of course you know about this as your firm represented Bridgeport. I followed the club as a fan, but until I started researching it, I had no idea how complicated these deals are.
Now this voice is what they call urban West Yorkshire English, and it's a relatively new accent. I think that's good. I think that's good. I think if I was a lawyer, that would be a good answer. So I'm going to rate that positive, yes. And then
clients will appreciate a lawyer having excellent awareness of how their business works. You need to show the client that you understand all aspects of their business, and this is true no matter what kind of business it is. Okay, now here we've got multicultural London English. Again, quite a new accent. It's a sort of evolution of Cockney London English with all the influences of the Afro-Caribbean, African, Bangladeshi, the huge variety of different cultures and sounds that you get in London have fused together in this accent. Okay, I've rated that one good. I'm going to give that the thumbs up.
Is agreed it could have an effect in many areas.
I'd say that we should look into the client's concerns further.
It's problematic if laws intrude on people's personal relationships in this way.
While I was in school, and I recall that some of my classmates' parents lost their jobs at the time.
This is estuary English. This is this sort of generalised Cockney-influenced southeast suburban London accent, but actually it goes beyond the London suburbs. You hear this all over the southeast, not just in the Thames estuary, and even sort of other areas outside London as well. Put aside the accent, I think that's a poor answer. I'm going to give that a thumbs down.
The Human Rights Act is an important piece of legislation.
Urban West Yorkshire English again.
The main difference is that people voluntarily enter into contracts, but that's not relevant in tort.
Okay, and on question 10, we've got estuary English again, but I think this is a solid answer. It sounds convincing to me, even though I'm not a lawyer. I'm going to give that a thumbs up. How did I do? 7 out of 10. Okay, so I got wrong. Oh, the first one I got right, yes. Second one I got right. Yes, that was a good answer. The RP one. The one about Bridgeport FC. Yes, I got that one right. That was a good answer. How would you demonstrate that the client was... Okay, so question 4, I got that one wrong. Question 5, I got that one wrong. That was a good answer about Brexit. The one about suing the client, I got that one right. Recent legal decision that, okay, even though that was RP, I got that one wrong. The one about the recession was a poor answer. And then question 9, how the Human Rights Act, that was a poor answer about the Human Rights Act. And that was a good answer. I was right. The estuary English one about contract and tort was a good answer. I was right. It says, almost there, but you're still a bit distracted by accent. You know, I'm wondering a little bit. Is this to do with my accent bias, or is this to do with me not being a professional lawyer or a professional legal recruiter? And even with some of the accents that the survey has found, people show bias against, like the urban West Yorkshire accent or the estuary accent or the multicultural London English accent. Even sometimes with those, I was doing something which I discovered from looking at other bits of the website is known as motivation to control a prejudiced response. It says, this is a psychological factor that has a strong effect on how listeners behaved in our nationwide survey. Listeners who were concerned that they should not seem prejudiced gave higher overall ratings for personal likability in particular. Well, that's another part of the survey they did. They asked people to rate, do you like the sound of that accent more? I think I was probably doing something of that in my quiz responses. One place where I think maybe there was some accent bias acting on me was the question about a legal decision that you disagreed with and why. And it was the one about the Human Rights Act.
You can't expect people to choose who they fall in love with.
And as it turned out, this would have been considered from a legal standpoint a poor answer. I thought it was a good answer, and I think a lot of that was to do with the accent. So there's a bit of it going on for me, as there is going on for everybody, as this research project points out. The good news is that it can be managed. When employers and people are aware of the potential for accent bias, they do filter for it. And so it found that these legal professionals, they were able to focus just on the content and not allow accent bias to have an influence on their ratings. So that's reassuring. Now, this is all relevant and all really interesting, but what about foreign accents? The fact is, all of the accents being judged or being considered here accents of England. But what about foreign accents? What about if this quiz was run with accents of non-native speakers of English? Imagine that the quiz worked something like this. Technology is going to be increasingly important. People have been talking about great new technologies such as blockchain. I read that the British law firms are still using faxes a lot of the time until 10 years ago, which shows how outdated our technologies can be. For both sides, lawyers are needed to advise on laws and terms, prepare the documentation, and make sure the deal goes smoothly with the best result for their client. I found Bridgeport FC's 50 million acquisition of Glen Evans very interesting. Of course, you know about this as your firm represented Bridgeport. I've followed the club as a fan, but until I started researching, I had no idea how complicated these deals are. How did you find that? How easy did you find it to follow? Because this is another factor, and this is not to do with the social or cultural status of accents in particular. This is to do, research has shown, the difficulty that people have understanding something affects the credibility of that something. So there's been some great research done by an academic called Sri Levari, and there's this great piece of research, there's an article here which I found about why people might discriminate against foreign accents. And it explains this issue of processing fluency, about how the cognitive work required to understand something can have an effect on how credible it sounds. The article is very interesting, but there's a link here to the study that was recently done. Exposing individuals to foreign accent increases their trust in what non-native speakers say. People, first of all, what they found in their earlier work, which is that people are more likely to believe things that are easier to process. But this new piece of research shows that, let's see if I can highlight it here for you. we show that a short exposure to foreign accents can reduce this bias, and the reduction in bias is due to improvement in the processing of an accent. So the more exposure that listeners get to certain accents, the easier they're going to find it to process. So that's good news. It kind of means that the more Polish accents, French accents, Italian accents, and all the other non-native accents that people get to hear, the easier they're going to find it as they go on. This is good news for us, for people that I work with. It means that we don't have to have a perfect British accent in order to be understood in a British workplace. For those of you watching in North America, it means you don't need to have a perfect American or a perfect Canadian accent in order to make yourself understood and have credibility. People around us will adapt, but I think it's helpful in the short term while we wait for that process to come to fruition. If we as individuals can meet those listeners halfway so that we can reduce the amount of work that the listener's brain is having to do to keep up with us and to absorb everything that we're saying. That's why accent reduction can help get you where you want to go. It's about focusing on those sounds in your accent that are most unfamiliar to a typical listener. We can just allow them to focus on what's being said and not get distracted by how it's being said. Because we can't count on everybody that we come across or speak to be as good at filtering for bias and focusing on substance as these legal recruiters were in this piece of research. We have to meet people where they are. I want to hear, if you've taken this test, if you've gone on the Accent Bias Britain website, which of course I'll provide the links for in the description, have a go and see what your results were and drop me a line in the comments. And just to make it fair, if you've gone through this video and watched right to the end and you've been through it step by step with me, you'll know what the results are. So let a couple of days go by, put it out of your mind, then try the quiz and then see how you score. Anyway, thanks for watching, and as usual, if it's your first time here, please subscribe, please do like this video, and come back for more next time.